Hello, I am Dr. Nicole Mahrer. I'm an assistant professor in the psychology department, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can talk to you about my project that I've been working on for the Lewis Center Fellowship. My project is entitled Virtual Reality Acceptance and Commitment Therapy in the New Era of Social Distancing. So we know that even before the pandemic, stress and anxiety in college students has been dramatically increasing across the decades. But now that students have been faced with the stressors associated with the pandemic, we are facing a mental health crisis that will unfortunately likely continue once the pandemic has concluded. And this is coming at the same time that therapists have had to change the way that they can safely deliver therapeutic services. So there is a therapy modality called acceptance and commitment therapy that is very well suited to meet the needs of college students in the context of this uncertainty. This is often called the third wave of therapeutic approaches, and it's an experiential intervention that emphasizes acceptance, mindfulness, coping, and value-based living. And there's an increasing amount of research that's supporting its efficacy to treat anxiety, depression, as well as chronic pain. So we have these ongoing health concerns at the same time that telehealth is becoming more common, and it's likely to continue. But at the same time, that shift to telehealth was pretty sudden, and it's really unclear right now what's working well and what's not. And then at the same time, we need to start thinking about what is the future going to look like for therapy, especially as telehealth is going to continue being part of the picture. And virtual reality might be a very welcome modality for both clients and clinicians. And so as this field grows, it's really important that we start focusing on the usability of this type of technology, the accessibility, the acceptability, and focusing on how we can use virtual reality to deliver and improve upon evidence-based practice. So in this project, I had 3 aims. First, I wanted to understand the clinician's experience with telehealth and their interest in using virtual reality technology. Second, I wanted to work with a startup technology company called Thera VR to actually develop virtual reality modules to deliver acceptance and commitment-based therapy, or ACT. And then the third aim was to show these modules to clinicians and assess their satisfaction and interest in using them with clients. So the first thing that I did was conduct focus groups. So I worked with 9 clinicians. We did the focus groups online. All these clinicians were forced into telehealth at the start of the pandemic. They were mostly in training, but also ranged to 5 up to 11 years post-degree, and they worked with a range from young children all the way up to older adults. All these clinicians were reporting that they were seeing increased symptomatology in their clients once the pandemic started. So things like stress, anxiety, and substance use. And during these focus groups, the clinicians discussed their experience delivering therapy via telehealth, as well as their interest in using virtual reality technology in the future. And what we did was code their responses using a software called Deduce, and then we looked for themes that emerged from that data. And this is what we found. So there were several things that the clinicians talked about worked well. One thing was that telehealth was more convenient. So they talked about their no-show rates dropping. Clients could access therapy just by logging onto their computer or getting on their telephone. And so it was just a lot more convenient to participate in therapy. It was also more accessible. So telehealth had the ability to reach these communities that typically would not engage in therapy. There were no costs associated with transportation, no limitations related to childcare anymore. So there was the ability to reach these more vulnerable communities. And they also commented on telehealth being largely effective. So they didn't think it was going to work as well, but they found that most of the time it did work pretty well to deliver therapy that way. So that was promising. But then there were also some things that did not work so well. So they found that overall there was just less engagement from their clients. Just the commitment, the follow through was not there. The motivation wasn't as high. There was also difficulty with therapeutic space. So usually in the therapy room, it's confidential, it's quiet, but all of a sudden the therapists were delivering therapy out of their homes. Clients might be talking about things that they don't want their family members or their significant others to hear about. And so they didn't have this therapeutic space anymore. And then there's also this general sense of Zoom fatigue. We've all spent so much time on the computer in front of the screen this year. And so they just didn't want to do something else in front of the computer screen. The focus groups also expressed interest in incorporating technology more into their clinical practice now and when the pandemic is concluded. They wanted to use virtual reality to supplement their care, and they thought some populations would be really excited about it, particularly college students. They also expressed interest in continuing to use ACT. They agreed that it was a really good fit for stress and anxiety related to the pandemic and other uncontrollable situations, but they talked about some challenges delivering these treatments in the typical telehealth format. And so we use this information to inform the development of these virtual reality modules. So let me talk to you a little bit about what the Thera VR looks like. In that technology, the therapist and the clients both create their own avatars, and then they meet for the session in this virtual reality space. But that can be using a virtual reality headset like the Oculus, or it can be on the computer or a tablet or the phone. We also paid attention to creating a therapeutic space. So there's different scenes that you'll see, but regardless, we wanted to create a calming environment for the clients that was free from distraction so they can learn these different coping skills that we're going to talk about. And then when we developed the ACT, what we call modules, we really paid attention to the different processes, the core processes of ACT that are part of the ACT hexaflex. And so if anyone's familiar with that treatment modality, you'll see some of these coming up. So mindfulness is a big component of ACT, and this is the idea of being in the present, being an observer in the present without judgment, not being sad about what happened in the past, not worrying about what's going to happen in the future. And so we developed a Leaves on the Stream module that helps clients practice mindfulness. A lot of times clients might have difficulty with imagery. And so this really brings them into the environment, and they can practice watching their thoughts, placing them on a leaf and letting it drift away. And so I have an example of this on the next slide. So you can see that the client is taken into this environment, and they can watch the leaves falling down. They can actually visualize and see their hand touching the leaf, placing whatever distressing thought they have on that leaf, letting go and just watching it float away without judgment. You can see how calming this environment would be, and it would be accessible to people that are very good at visualizing and other people that have a little bit more difficulty with that. Another module we created is cognitive diffusion. The idea of cognitive diffusion is you want to diffuse or separate yourself from your thoughts so they don't have as much power or control over you. So in this module, it allows the client to type out whatever thought they have that's causing them stress or anxiety. And then they can actually manipulate that thought. They can rotate it, they can stretch it, they can shrink it, they can throw it. And all of a sudden that gives them more power over that thought. We also created a values module. In ACT, it's really important that clients understand what is important to them, what gives their life meaning, and so they can start to work towards their values. And this is a module that would allow them to sort these different values cards to figure out, what's not important to them, what's important to them, and what's very important to them. So they and the therapist can know what they can start looking at and working towards in therapy. Another thing that we did as part of this project is partner with a company called Elite HRV. And actually some students from University of Laverne helped to integrate the technology of Elite HRV, which tracks heart rate variability, into the Thera VR system. And so in real time, while a client is in therapy with their therapist, they can be tracking their heart rate and their heart rate variability, and their therapist would be able to see it to understand, okay, how anxious are they when they're coming into session? And did this relaxation exercise or this coping strategy I taught help calm them down? So in terms of next steps for this project, the ACT modules in virtual reality and that biofeedback integration will be complete by the end of this semester. I will then conduct a second focus group where the clinicians will try out these virtual reality modules and provide feedback about their satisfaction and the perceived helpfulness of these modules that they see for their clients. We'll then iterate on the modules. The VR programmers will make the improvements based on that focus group feedback. And then pending additional funding, we'll think about starting to conduct some clinical trials with college students. I want to thank some very important people that helped with this project. My graduate student assistant, Noelle Huffman, conducted the focus groups, helped with the coding. The virtual reality programmers, Mario Ruiz and Melissa Auclair from Thera VR, as well as some University of Laverne students, Ishmael Abdullah and Aaron Villalobos. The ULV students that helped with the Thera VR Elite HRV integration. So that's Jay-Zach Loke and Bo Doust. And then finally, the Thera VR leadership team, Aaron Bogdansky and Dr. Peter Greeny. Thank you very much for listening. And here is my email if anyone has any questions or wants to follow up.